Alright, sorry it took me so long to get this out. Life gets a little crazy sometimes, but here it is, how to make a working searchlight in Halo 5. Also, I don't normally use the PC Forge, but for this video it made it a lot easier. So if I get lost in the menus, it's just because I'm used to forging on Xbox. But the first thing we're going to do is we need to pick out a light. I like using this Covenant pod. Looks cool, it's got some points on it for magnets, and it does what I need. And you can find that in props, Covenant, and Covenant pod full, and that's what it gets you. So once we got our light picked out, we're going to change some options on it. So we're going to go into it. We want to make, you make it any color you want, doesn't really matter. But we're going to make it a spotlight, and you can make it any color you want. Whatever your map calls for, that's what you can make it. And then the cone is what we want to change. So whatever your map calls for, that's how you make your light a little bigger, smaller, whatever works for you. Once we have that, we're going to put one script on it, and that script is going to say when condition, timer check, initial 0, repeat 0.05. And then when it does that, we want it to action, move offset, and we want it to look for a target, and then we want to label, change that mod 1 to label add, and then we want to make that label something you're going to remember. It can be any label you want. Just remember that this is what it's going to look for. So I'm just going to leave it as user x-ray. So now it's going to look to move to user x-ray. Once we got that set up, we can go ahead and back out. The next thing you're going to need is a ball and a cage, and that can be found under extras, joints, advanced ball, and advanced cage. They magnet into each other, and so you just put them into each other and you get something that looks like this. And once you have that, we're going to take our light, and we're going to also take our ball. And once you got both of them, we're going to go into the properties, and I don't think I picked them up both. Alright, so once you got them both picked, you're going to go create welded group. And once it's welded, we're going to go back in and we want to change its physics to normal. Okay, so just the ball and just the light. You want the cage to stay where it's at. Once you have all that, you can let go of it and it's just going to fall down. Cage is going to keep holding the ball up and won't let it drop. So we're done with the light. Alright, next we're going to need two different script brains. The purple one is going to be like your area that you want your spotlight to search over. And then the yellow one is going to be what your spotlight's looking for. So in the purple one, I have it set to box and I have it to show. Having show is just easier while you're setting it up, and then you just change it to whatever area best works for where you're trying to have your searchlight look for. But you want to remember like the long distance. So 127 is how wide, or this it says length, but yeah, the length of my box. So 127 is what I want to remember. And on this we have two scripts. The first script is going to say boundary check, enter players, and then we want it to power set Charlie on. And then our second script is going to say boundary check, exit players, power set Charlie off. And then we also wanted to have another action, and it's going to wait 0.7 seconds, and then it's going to message send to Delta. So when a player enters it, it's going to turn Charlie on. When a player leaves, it's going to turn Charlie off, and then waits 0.7 seconds, and then send a message to Delta. Alright, and we're done with that one. So then the final brain is going to be what our spotlight's looking for. So we want to go in here and we want to change its label. And then just whatever you picked for the light to look for. So I have it looking for user x-ray. So I'm going to have switched the label of this brain to say that it's user x-ray. And then I left it as a cylinder, and I have it just showing because it makes it easier while you're setting it up. And then you just want to set a good radius top and bottom so that when a player is running and boosting, they can't like jump outside of it. But once you have all that set up, we're going to put 5 scripts on this one, and the first one is going to say timer check, initial 0, so I want it to just fire right away, and it's going to repeat 10.05 seconds. So this is going to change depending on how fast or slow your light is moving, and I'll show you how to figure all that out in a second. But once it does its initial timer check, I want it to move offset, and it's going to move horizontally 63.5. So that's half of the purple's 127. So it's going to move 63.5, so that it'll move to the edge of it. And then you want action 2 to reset position over the same amount of time, 2.5, 2.5, so that once it hits the edge, it'll move back the same speed. And then the third one is going to move offset, but it's going to be negative that number, so 63.5, so that'll move the other direction. And then the final action is going to be to reset itself over that same amount of time again. So depending on how fast or slow you want it to move, that's where you're going to change these. This 2.5, the higher the number, the slower it's going to move, and the lower the number, the faster it'll move. But 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, 2.5 equals 10, and that's how long you want it to repeat every time. So once it's done going through its cycle, you want it to repeat. I put it up a little bit because when it was the same amount of time, there was a possibility of that it didn't complete its cycle before it tried to refire it. So just delaying that a little bit worked that issue out. So now it can go through its whole cycle before firing off, saying, hey, go do it again. And then our second script is going to say it's going to be the condition is going to be a multi, so message/power multi, and we want 2 triggers. So we want it to message receive on Charlie, and then we also want it to power check Charlie to see if it's on. So once if it finds both those are there, it's going to move offset, and it's going to look for the target. Let's say Zulu. I want it to look for Zulu. So mod 1 label add label user Zulu. So it's going to move to the, once it has its power check on, and once it's getting the message from Charlie, it's going to look for anything targets with the label on it, Zulu. And then you want to bring the time down so that it can stay right on the player. The lower this number, the faster it moves, so the better. You don't want to put it up too high, otherwise players can run away from it. Alright, and then this third script is going to say boundary check, enter players. So when a player walks into the boundary, it's going to label change the activator, so whoever walked into it, and it's going to change, it's going to add a label, and we're going to change it to Zulu. So now when a player walks in there, it's going to label that player as Zulu, and that's what script number 2 is looking for. So it's targeting Zulu. So once a player walks into it, it makes that player Zulu, and then it also looks for him. Alright, and then our fourth script is going to say boundary check continuous player. So when a player's in there, it's going to continually send messages to Charlie. And that's one of the things that the script's looking for. So if it's receiving a message on Charlie, it's going to look for the Zulu player. So who's ever in it, it's labeled Zulu. It's also looking for it. And finally, we want it to, when it gets a message on Delta, we want it to reset its position over that same time, just because it keeps the speed looking the same. Alright, so, and that's that for that script. So now everything should be set. So I'm just going to come into the world options, and I'm going to enable scripting. So now it should be all firing. So the light is looking to move to the brain because it's looking for that, it's targeting X-ray, which is what this yellow one is labeled as, X-ray, and it's trying to move to it, but because it's locked in with that ball and cage, the cage won't let the ball go, so it's just going to keep like pointing towards it. And then the other, alright, and then so if you remember the purple brain, when a player enters, the power on Charlie goes on. So I have this block set to turn blue when the power's on, turn red when the power's off. So just a way I can make sure it's working the proper way. Alright, and then so this one. So now the yellow brain has changed my label to Zulu, and it's looking to follow Zulu. So now this yellow circle is going to follow me because it's looking to follow Zulu, and I'm Zulu. And then the light is looking for X-ray, which is what the brain's called, so the light's going to follow the yellow. And yeah. When I leave out, the purple brain shoots that message to Delta, which the yellow brain says, hey, once you get that message on Delta, you should reset yourself, so it goes back to doing what it was doing. Hopefully this helps and I wasn't too confusing about it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll hopefully get to them in a timely manner.